Welcome back to the SANDCAST podcast, presented by Wilson, our favorite volleyball. And at some point here, we'll take a YK water break because, been lucky enough to have them hydrating us during the show. Today we have Ed Keller back on the show. It's not everybody that gets to come on twice, but when you're the encyclopedia of beach volleyball, we got to bring you on. How you doing, Ed?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Tri. I'm doing well. Just thinking about all this stuff that's going on in volleyball. This year was really a cool year for fans, players, coaches alike. New things, different things happening, new organizations running the various pro leagues.
Yeah.
A lot of reaction to that. I think that's a big part of sort of this end of season reflection.
Yeah.
Is to think about where are we? Did things improve? From a fan's perspective, the two tours, from players' perspective, from a revenue, like can you make a good living doing this?
Yeah.
There's a lot going on right now. It's pretty intense.
That's why it's cool to have you on the show, actually, because we don't really get that fan perspective on the show. And, maybe we should bring more fans on, but you're like the ultimate fan because you're like a hybrid coach, hybrid historian of the sport, hybrid player yourself. But also just the ultimate fan.
I'm going to make this clear, by
travel?
the way. I'm going to make this clear. I was never a very good player. I played.
Yeah, but
I barely
South Bay.
scraped AAA. I won a couple matches in a couple first rounds of qualifiers, and I played a lot of four-man. So, but my perspective early on, I was kind of lucky. I moved to California when I was 19. I was still in college back east. And my parents moved to 8th Street, Hermosa. And kind of one of the interesting things I've been thinking about this last couple of weeks is Rosie, right?
Yeah.
Because he just got in the Hall of Fame. Very rarely,
I wanted him to come on the podcast with you. We might need to brag about that guy a little bit.
He's one of my favorite human beings of all time.
Yeah, so do they actually have ballots for it's a CBVA Hall of Fame.
That's right. They do have ballots.
So that's just California. And is there another Hall of Fame?
This
is the one you want to be in.
There's a volleyball overall Hall of Fame in Holyoke, Massachusetts. There's an international volleyball Hall of Fame, I think somewhere probably in Switzerland.
Yeah.
But this is the one. This is the CBVA, the California Beach Hall of Fame.
This is the beach volleyball one.
This is interesting because you have to really have an impact on California beach volleyball, I think, to be considered. So Rosie, I move here and I go down to 8th Street where my parents are living, because I'm like, I'll play a game of volleyball, whatever.
Right.
It's like the summer of 97. So they got 96, we were living closer to Marine Street. 97, in the winter, they moved to 8th Street. So 97, Rosie's like 17 at the time, right?
Yeah.
I think he had his 17th birthday at the beginning of that summer. I didn't really know him. So I walk down and I see this court and I go, there's this one guy and he's a kid. And he's the skinniest you've ever seen in the upper body. His quads are the most giant, craziest quads. And he's doing everything you've never seen. He's jumping over like chest high over the net. And everyone's like, oh, that's Rosie. And I'm like, I want to meet this guy, And so I go up and, hey, I'm Ed. Nice to meet you. I live up the street, whatever. And we kind of start hanging. But that was the impact he had on the sport. There's no other player I can remember myself saying, I'm going to go to everything he plays. I don't care if it's a four-man, if it's a AAA tournament, if it's some kind of a drunk draw. I'm going to watch this guy play.
Yeah.
As a young fan at that time, I was about 20, and I'd been playing volleyball only for maybe about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But I drove up and down the coast for an entire summer and watched every AAA tournament he played in because it was so captivating.
Yeah, and aside from just how legitimately good he was at volleyball at the highest level, he kind of had this aura about him as well. It was like someone else could have an amazing legacy without actually being that good at volleyball. The way that he interacted and is just like the definition of the volleyball community in the South Bay, and then you go international and you go travel overseas. And everybody knows Rosie, hangs out with everybody.
How many players do you know that when they lose a match in a limited tournament, go right in the stands to kick back with the crowd, have a quick beer, and he's that guy who loves it so much that losing or winning the match is important to you guys so much because it depends on how much money you make. But that was out of his thoughts within a split second, and he was hanging with his boys or with the crowd in whatever country, wherever it was. He just loved it, and he was such a genuine and still is one of the nicest, kindest, sweetest human beings I've ever met. And he never has a bad thing to say about anyone. He's just just an amazing human being.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing about Rosie, that genuine love of the sport. Right? And he started playing at 13. There's a guy named Dale Smith.
It's like the sport raised Rosie, basically.
Well, this guy Dale Smith basically, saw him down at the beach, started teaching him how to play volleyball. Dale was, like an AAA guy, a good local player, a smaller guy, and him and Rosie just played double A's, then through triple A's. There was a summer Rosie hurt his right shoulder, and he played the whole summer left-handed in AAA tournaments with Dale. And they played well.
That actually explains a lot in terms of like what he was able to do with his left hand later in his career.
Yeah, it's because he heard it. It was, I think he was 16. It was before I knew him, but everyone told me the story.
How many people would not play that summer, right?
Yeah, most guys would be like, "Oh, I hurt my right shoulder. I guess I'm gonna have to rehab." He just goes, "No, I'm just gonna play the whole summer left-handed." He was gnarly left-handed. You know what I mean? So like that was the thing is Dale kind of gave Rosie a place to feel empowered and love, and brought this love of the game to him. And Rosie was an all-star in every sport he played.
Right.
But because of the various things with school, volleyball was the thing he could do without having to go to high school.
Right.
So he could 360 dunk both ways when he was 16.
Yeah,
I mean, think about how many people can even 360 dunk at all.
I want to try to explain to fans that didn't get to watch him back in the day, and I don't even know if I don't think I can say that I played.
When you came in around 2008, 9? When was you?
No, 2000.
You were 12?
12.
Oh, was that when you came in? Okay.
So like, it's hard to say that he wasn't in his prime because he was still winning $1 million events.
Wow, yeah, okay.
Right?
Yeah, okay.
My first year on tour, I think, was his first year with Phil.
Yeah, that's wow. Okay, right.
Yeah, so 12. I was
12. He was with Jake still.
Yeah, it was right after.
But when you went international with Hayden, he was playing with Phil.
Yes, right.
Yeah, so he was at the top of the sport. I mean, it was,
Yeah, 13 was my first full year.
It's interesting because I try to explain to people, like, Rosie was the best player in the world in 2012, but he was more explosive when he was younger. He was more doing crazier things. I think he learned to rein that in and make the best volleyball play.
Yeah.
But when he was 18, 19... And I had the best tournament I ever had was Rosie asked me to play in a AAA with him one time, and I didn't deserve to be there. It was way above my level. I'm fine admitting that. We got fourth, so I got my AAA rating. Unfortunately, that mean for another year and a half I couldn't play in the normal A's and double A's I liked playing in.
Right.
But the point I'm making about the story is we get to the match to get into the semifinals, to basically get my AAA rating.
Yeah.
And we're playing a guy, Justin Perlstrom, who played in the AVP in the 90s. And I don't know who his partner was, but Rosie goes, that other guy, that's the guy you're going to serve. He literally tells me, just serve that guy. He looks a little tired. Fine, okay. So I start serving this guy. Rosie blocks the guy 11 times. Remember, we used to play for 15 points, right, in a side-out scoring. So Rosie blocks this guy 11 times for points in a 15-point game. Okay, and some of them weren't even traditional blocks. He waited for the guy to hit a high line shot and jumped and spiked the high line shot back at this guy. Shit like that. Excuse me, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Okay. Shit like that was like, you just sat there. If you're on the court, it's even weirder than being a fan because you're thinking like, how does he know?
He wasn't like coached in any traditional sense.
No,
so
never.
That's when you start to see players get really creative and like fluid with and doing crazy stuff where you're like, oh.
Well, and he was chest over the net. I mean, he's 6'4" and reaches, the net's
and,
like 8'1",
and he's a
right?
defender.
Yeah,
his whole time on the world tour.
But he was a blocker at that time.
Right.
He played blocker more often when he was young. So he played with Casey Jennings for some tournaments. He was blocking. Larry Whittingham split block. Mark Williams he played more defense with. Carlucci he played more defense with. But early on he did a lot of both.
Yeah.
Because remember before your time there weren't, like you said, 6'8" guys didn't really exist. Right. It wasn't. Blockers could be sick.
Ricardo was like
he would be
freak.
the biggest freakish guy ever at that time. Yeah. So if you were a 6'4" blocker, you were okay. Even Dax Holdren was a very successful blocker. Do you ever see Dax Holdren play?
I didn't get to see him play much.
So Dax was a Santa Barbara guy, right? Played with Todd Rogers in high school. John Lee, who just got inducted in the Hall of Fame, was their coach.
Played with Wong in the Olympics?
Steino.
Right? Oh, Stein. Gotcha.
Yeah, Steino and Dax. And so, interestingly enough, Stein's taller than Dax. Dax is about 6'2", Stein's about 6'4". Dax did the blocking mostly, right? And he was very successful. They won a lot of tournaments. He played with Fnoy as a blocker. He played with Todd Rogers as a blocker. And he was 6'2", and I love you, Dax. If you watch this, you didn't jump very high, but you were an amazing athlete. I played with his cousin in college, Dare Holdren, so I can say this and be okay with it.
Yeah.
But Dax was a phenomenal hand-eye.
Right.
Right. So guys like Kenyon Seaman, guys in those days weren't that big, but boy, could they side out.
Right.
Even on the small court.
Yeah.
They just hit the corner every time with a lot of heat, or if you tried to jump in, they could cut it back or whatever. So I think like there was a group of players after the AVP went bankrupt the first time, around 98, 99, and 2000 it kind of resurrected, that were still hanging on, that were great players in the 90s. You saw like Whitmar still played for a while. There were guys who still played for a bit. And then
you got this 16-year-old.
Slowly but surely, all of a sudden, the guys like Rosie appear. Well, I mean, there weren't a lot of, there really is no other Rosie. But Rosie appears, he does qualify at 16. Well, he was about to turn 17 the next week. It's a funny story, he'll tell you, because they actually lost the game to get in. But the team that beat them was from Poland, and the AVP had a cap on foreign teams. This was the 97.
Oh, so they got in.
They called it the Manhattan Open, but technically it was being played in Hermosa.
And there's international teams?
Yeah, well, they would come and play because 2 were allowed in.
Oh, gotcha.
But if there was already 2 in the main draw, if you qualified, then you were not allowed to play. So that happened. So Rosie and Dale got in. And it's so funny, he left the VHS tape at my house for like 10 years. I still watch every once in a while of that tournament of him. And he maybe had another copy, I don't know. So it was him against Ack and Louie. Him and Dale played Ack and Louie. They were down 14-0. He told the story of the CBA Hall of Fame. It was great. They ended up getting 4 points and then losing. But Ack and Louie in 97 were winning tournaments. Scott Active is gnarly. Then they play John Anselmo and a guy named Eric Moore from Colorado. They called him Sally. And they lost like 15-11 or 12. Right. So like Rosie was at 16, almost 17, was competing though.
Right.
Like it wasn't like he went into a pro tournament and just got blown out. I mean, in the second round game against a pretty good, solid veteran team, he almost won the game. And he was playing with Dale, who, great. I love you, Dale, and you're great. But obviously Rosie was going big places, And
has there been anyone that you can compare athleticism to Rosie in his prime?
There's things
obviously
like
not height.
Here's what I would say: Jason Ring is an interesting idea because Ringer had the same kind of jump. He didn't have as successful of a career, but he did win.
He didn't have the touch and the feel for the game.
What Rosie had, first of all, Rosie didn't handset until he played with Jacob, almost at all. Huh. He used to tell me, I don't need to handset. I just bump set everything, and that way I won't get called, and I won't lose a point. And that was kind of the old school mentality.
Yeah.
He bump set, and his touch, his like passing and setting was phenomenal. Right. His feel for the game and his understanding of how to play the other team. Like he didn't need to do a lot of scouting. I traveled with him a little bit when he was playing with Phil and other people overseas, and he'd just tell me before the game, here's the exact strategy how to beat this team. And he'd have it dialed in without studying. That's
actually a surprising thing. You would think that's something I learned. You would think that Rosie's the kind of guy that just feels the game and it's just natural. I just step out there and play. I don't need to think too much.
No,
he's not really thinking too much. He
had a game plan, but he didn't spend a lot of time studying ahead of time.
Right.
You know what's a good story about Rosie?
He had a good feel for it, and he has strategy. Like you watch him play poker, like stuff like this. This guy's thinking.
Yes.
And he understands
He's a brilliant
strategy.
sports mind.
His
mom told me, sorry to cut you off, Tri, but his mom told me when he was 2, he would watch football games and understand all the plays. He would say, that's the wide receiver going on a post route, like when he was like 2 or 3 years old. It was like he's just has that brilliance of understanding of all sport.
Yeah.
Like it just made sense to him. So when he came to volleyball, there's not that many pieces, moving pieces, so he could really understand the strategy very quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
Rosie, legend. I'm so happy for him.
It's such a beautiful thing to see him inducted in the Hall of Fame because – again, it's not about how many tournaments you win or all this other stuff. It's just about, A, what an amazing human being he is, but B, what an impact he had on the game because things like the Vegas line, I was standing under like there was like a light tower on that side of the court, and me and the Rosie Raiders were kind of lined up around that area when that happened. I was sleeping in my car. I drove to Vegas just because I was like, I'm going to go watch Rosie playing the King of the Beach.
If you haven't seen the Vegas line, just YouTube it. I think you could just do it. Sean Rosenthal, Vegas line.
That's all you got to put in there. And Mike Lambert is a monstrous spot. At the time, This is the weird thing. It's 2005, right?
Yeah.
Rosie's playing with Larry Witt in his third year. They've won 2 tournaments. They had some finals, some semis. But Rosie's really emerging, as people know. He's going to be something really special. He's about 25 at the time.
Yeah.
But you've got a few blockers at that time where the remember, Mike Lambert had been playing with Karch, Karch is basically almost the end of his career at that point. They still won a tournament at one point playing the I formation, right? And then you've got Jake Gibb, who was the MVP in 2005, winning 4 tournaments with Stein. And then you've got a few other guys. One of them was Phil, who was kind of under the radar at that point. People didn't think Phil was going to be the best blocker. Everyone's waiting for Mike Lambert. Mike Lambert's decision was going to define the teams of the next year and through the Olympics.
Yeah.
He decided to grab Stein, who was probably the best defender at the time.
Right.
And if he hadn't got injured, we probably would have had a totally different picture.
Right.
Because Lambert and Stein were nasty.
Yeah.
But then you have Jake Gibb, the MVP, who's like, okay, I guess I lost Stein. I'm going to grab this young kid, Rosie. And Rosie told some unbelievable stories at that Hall of Fame. And for the folks out there, you can watch Rosie's Hall of Fame speech and all the stories and Jake and all that. It was amazing. So some of those anecdotal stories in there were incredible of his time with Jake. It was just, especially early on, because it's figuring out that partnership that worked out so well for him.
The best Rosie was probably 2012 Rosie, where they dominated the world tour. And he was so dialed in. And it took playing with Jake. Because Jake was so disciplined.
Yeah.
He had all the other things down.
In my single years, before I got married in 2008, I was basically out on the beach hanging with the guys all the time because that's what you do, right? And I spent a lot of time with Rosie and Larry Witt, especially from about 2000 till about maybe 2006-ish. And Larry was living down here in Hermosa, and Rosie was living in various different places, but at one point in Hermosa, and for quite a bit of time, and we would go to the beach, and they would play a little, but they didn't do any real formal training.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. That was just starting to become a thing, right?
So Jake got him into all
That's what Jake knew. He knew if we get a coach, and they grab Mike Dodd, right? And if we do formal, real training, real practices, we're not just going to go out and play matches with people. We're going to work on our weaknesses. And we're going to work in the gym. Rosie had not been in a gym. Right? I mean, it's like, how did he do it? It's funny. He told me once, I'll never forget this. Well, I had a BMX bike when I was a kid, and I would just ride up and down all the big hills in Redondo every day. On a BMX bike, how your knees are all up like this.
You ever been to a gym, Rosie? Well, I had a BMX bike once.
And I rode up and down all these hills, and my legs just got huge and strong.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I started jumping 45 inches. I was like, sure, guys.
I think that's genetic.
Yeah.
Don't think it was from BMX.
It was pretty amazing. Jake took it, though, and said, this is this unbelievable athletic talent. And over those years, and of course, they had a little blip because we all know Jake had that little testicular cancer issue that kind of hurt a year or two in the middle.
Yeah.
But then when they got it all together in 2012, it was magic, right? They win, I think, 3 out of 4 at one point tournaments, or maybe it was 2 wins, a second and a third in a row.
Yeah, something crazy.
Right leading up to the Olympics. They were so hot, and they led.
They were the favorites, right?
I think they would be considered, if not the favorite, maybe the number 2 favorite.
Yeah.
They were really hot because they were hot leading into the Olympics.
Germans won that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just getting 5th isn't bad, but when you're so close, it must be hard.
When you know that it's yours to win or lose. We were talking about that on the last podcast with Mel, because Mel was the favorite. I think she was the 1 seed.
Yeah.
So she had to deal with that, plus being in COVID and all that. It's just a whole different Olympics or experience that you're going through.
But isn't it interesting with the Olympics? I've been thinking about this a lot for you guys. It's essentially that's the pinnacle of the sport, for better or for worse. And I say that because I don't totally know that it's really the pinnacle of the sport. It's what everyone works towards, and it's all the accolades. But if you have a great long career and win a lot of tournaments outside of the Olympics, and that would be great as well, I think.
I think there is the sport would be different if it wasn't for the Olympics. And I think the Olympics is so good in so many ways, so you can't really talk it down. But I think we would have different things, and every year we'd have more of a celebration of the champion of that year, whereas we kind of just blow through these years and we're just like, oh, they played tournaments. Whoever won tournaments is the only way you really get accolade, rather than recognized, rather than really winning the season. Who's going to win the
Yeah.
season? Who is the
Yeah.
AVP champion
Who's
this
the
year?
points champion of the
Who's
AVP,
the
for
points
example?
champion? There should be something.
There's this issue, right, when you think about the Olympics with points, because the F5EB has just turned into like, and I love you guys at Volleyball World. Like, I've had a great time meeting them, but they are essentially making it into a point game with very little prize money.
Yeah.
In my opinion, and look, this is
100%.
only my humble opinion.
100%.
I just think that they're forcing people to go to events to earn points who don't necessarily want to be there.
Yes.
In weird locations that are hard to get to. And the schedule
100%.
this year was a bit disjointed because it was maybe their first year.
Yeah.
So when you're running elite tournaments going from South Africa to Brazil on consecutive weeks, when it's a minimum of a 34-hour travel from one to the other, that's now next year's tentative schedule. You'll all see it soon. They have remedied that particular travel issue.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that they're doing that. But I do think that, you can only motivate players with points for so long before they start to just be like, I'm over this.
Yeah, you're basically they are over it. I'm in
Yeah.
the Players Association conversations, and no one's happy.
No.
Not the
How
young
could you
players who are getting all this opportunity, because you really just have to do well in 2 events, and you could be top 20 in the world.
It's funny because then you see the last 2 Elite 16s that happened in South Africa and Brazil had no women's qualifier.
No one's in Australia.
No women's qualifier.
Yeah, right.
Think about running a tournament which is supposed to be the highest
16.
level in the world, when only 1 or 2 of the top 10 teams even show up.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to have 16 teams in a qualifier plus 12 main draw teams, and only 16 total out of 28 potential teams show up.
Yeah.
When normally there should be a wait list to get in.
Yeah.
That is telling in and of itself, right? That tells the whole story.
And the top players don't want to not go to these big events either. But we're kind of forced to go to these challengers so we don't get knocked out, because there's so many points in these challengers. Yeah. Whereas if you just allowed the top players, listen, you're going to go play on this 16 tour. Yeah. The challenger level players are going to play on the challenger level tour. And then at some point, there's going to be the top of the challengers are going to replace the bottom.
And that's what I thought originally was going to happen. It's just a weird thing. And wouldn't it be better? And look, we can sit here and think about the best ideas forever, of course. But wouldn't it be better to have bigger tournaments and a season that's just the elite season, like 32 teams with a big qualifier, and here's the season, there's 15 of them or something. Yeah. Rather than having 42 tournaments split among 3 levels, it gets confusing as a fan, because I go see Qatar win a challenge and then not show up to an Elite 16 a week later or something, and I go, well, that's weird. Like, why would they play the challenge and then not play it doesn't, like, there's mixed signals. Yeah. And I think, like, Volleyball World has to carefully think about the product they're presenting. I will tell you this: their streaming is amazing. The priority. Right? Their streaming is amazing. That's the priority. Their events I find to be professionally run with a good setup of stands and concessions. And
yeah, I mean, you can't compare it to the Grand Slams back in the day.
No. There's not going to be another Klagenfurt. No. I mean, right? Or the Vienna version, which is now happening. Yeah. Okay, so that's a thought I've had, because you know Hannes well, and you probably know Wilco well. Mm-hmm. Those 2 guys, are they not the best promoters of the sport? Probably. They are. And is it not a strange thing that's happening where neither one of them really wants to work with the Volleyball World and the FIVB? I don't know. We could go down this rabbit hole. There's a lot of thoughts I've been having about things. I will say this: a rebirth year for both AVP and international. Mm-hmm. So we'll learn a lot more next year, probably. And AVP, I thought, did a tremendous job with the resources they had this year. Honestly, what do you think about AVP and how it went this year? Yeah, so I did hear that the resources got basically cut in half from what they had before. So it's tough. Yeah. And that's why we saw some of the Fort Lauderdale, where you had 4 rows of baby stands. Yeah, baby stands. And so I think they did a good job with that. Obviously playing in, for me, 7 AVPs might be the most I've ever played in, which is it's great, right? And winning 3 of them, right? Granted, a lot of the time, or, before COVID and all that, it was, I couldn't play in all of them because of the Olympics. And we'll see how that plays out. That plays out. There is at least discussions going on between USA Volleyball and AVP, which I don't think will necessarily help in terms of allowing us to play AVPs. I actually have suggested that
us players get together and be like, hey, let's pick events where they're off limits. Like none of us can go to these international events so that we can all stay home. Nobody's going to leave.
Have a nice full field AVP.
Nobody's going to leave and be the one team to go sneak points while we're playing in an AVP.
Right.
We all just agree we're going to play in these AVPs.
That'd be really cool.
Develop this domestic
because
tour.
the domestic tour has to be our lifeblood for you as USA players and for us as USA fans and whatever the role is. I think with USA Volleyball, I hope that more can be cooperated on there because there was a time when the AVP was, as we all know, was a way for people to make a living and not just the top 4, 6, 8 players.
Right.
There was a time when 30, 40 guys, now it was men only at that time, so I can't really say men and women, but at the time the men's tour, the AVP in the early 90s, especially up until maybe 95 or 96, was providing a good living for probably 30 or 40 guys. There was guys getting consistent nines that would make 30, 40 grand a year plus endorsements. The endorsements were crazy back then. Someone told me, do you hear this? Oakley was paying guys 75 grand to wear Oakley sunglasses. Did Ken Steffes say that?
I don't know.
I have a funny story about Ken Steffes. I loved that he was on. He's honestly one of my favorite players of all time because of his skill and ability and everything. I went to high school with his 2 first cousins, and I stayed with his mom and dad in the summer of 93. I just started playing volleyball, and this is my first experience watching beach volleyball. So it's interesting. My first time watching a beach volleyball match was the Manhattan Open in 93. And so my buddy, who was Kent's first cousin, Josh Apgar, and he goes, hey, we're going to go out and see my cousin Kent. And we just started playing high school volleyball together like that past year. And he goes, you want to come with me? I go, okay. I was lucky enough. My parents, got me a plane ticket, and we stayed with Kent's parents, Jackson, and I forgot his mom's name. I'm really sad about that. They lived up in Palisades.
Right.
And so here I am watching the Manhattan Open at its
at Kent Steffes' house?
We drove down, to watch the Open, right?
But
I stayed at his house. Yeah, I stayed at his parents' house. But it was like, back then, how big the stands were at the Manhattan Open, it must have been 10,000 people. Like, it was huge. Dang. 8 or 10. It was, I could be exaggerating crazy, but it felt like
there wasn't like that, like as much VIP at the top.
No VIP.
It was just like straight stands.
It was huge stands on like 4 sides that went way up. It was kind of slanted, then went way up.
Yeah.
And that the other funny memory, there's a couple memories I have of that like come through. I'm here. I am like 17 years old, and I'm so starstruck.
Right.
Beyond starstruck. Jose Loyola, to me, was the number one person to see. And I always tell people...
Now he's just your homie.
I know, right? Jose is so cool. God, he's the coolest guy ever. But I remember just like being like, oh my God, it's Jose Loyola. Like there was no one cooler in the universe to me because when he would warm up...
Yeah.
Isn't it funny how as guys, we always look at how hard people hit the ball in warm-ups? When you're a young player, it's like...
And Loyola's that guy.
Oh, he was that... Dude, he hit the ball sideways, like halfway up the stands. Like, he didn't hit it down the back part of the stands. He hit it so it would bounce sideways halfway up the stands. Right. I was like, who is this guy? He was apparently 39 inches tested vertical in the sand at that time for Jose.
In the
sand, tested at 39 inches. So if you just think about how physical he was... I mean, he was that original, almost like a pre-Rosie Rosie.
Right, yeah.
Right? Like, but way more technical because he came from the Brazilian and he was that guy. I mean, he was the guy. Jose won 55 tournaments. I mean, he's no joke. You know what I mean? He's like all-time legend.
Right.
And I love that he's leading the USA Volleyball developmental stuff.
Yeah.
And I love his style, and he's just the coolest dude. So
still out there every day.
He's grinding, man. Yeah, he's a warrior.
But what's your outlook like on the AVP at least, like domestically?
I like, so as long as they can kind of keep what they did this year, I think the fans really enjoyed the experience overall of most of the events. Certain ones in particular, New Orleans. I had never been to an event in New Orleans. So I went to that one. It was held at this really cool, like sort of beach club kind of spot, like bar, restaurant.
Coconut Beach or something like that?
That place was...
I still haven't been.
That place was sick. And I mean, the event was... You know what's fun about it was the party atmosphere. It reminded me of the 90s again.
How was the event? Like, did it feel professional, though? Or did it kind of feel amateur?
That one was better. The Coconut Beach one had pretty good stands. Okay. They had like little VIP on either side and stands on 2 sides. And it felt good.
It was small, though.
It was smaller. It wasn't the Gold Series. Yeah. Right? But with what they had there, they had a crowd, like a strong crowd of rabid local fans who loved it. And the volleyball, I think at this point, the volleyball is the best it's ever been, like skill-wise.
Really?
You know, I think so.
Interesting.
I don't like...
That's actually a good conversation is because you're one of the only people who kind of has seen three, 4 generations, and comparing the athlete, because you always hear legends, so you're like, oh, that guy must have been better than anybody we're seeing here today.
You know what you got to do?
I want to make a top 75 all time list. Like, you know how NBA did that?
That would be insane.
Where you look at the list, you're like, how is
Klay
how
is a guy from the 50s
not even on the 75,
right in the top,
and this guy I don't know his name, and he's ahead of Kevin Durant,
and he's in Converse All-Star sneakers, right? I think with volleyball, I'll tell you what's a funny thing. YouTube has a lot. Okay, I'm going to go 2 different directions real quick here.
Okay.
YouTube has a lot of interesting stuff on it, older tournaments, and so you can watch a lot of that. There was an indoor series in the early 90s where Hovland, Mike Dodd, AJ, all those guys played. You can watch that on YouTube. And when I watch it, and those guys were freaking amazing. Maybe it was the old camera or something. I go, wow, there's probably, they wouldn't even get hardly a point on a current college team. Like, the way the physicality of the indoor game has changed.
Oh, you watched the indoor.
Oh, this is an indoor 6-on-6 hardcore, like Hovland, who at one point, people say Hovland was the best indoor player in the world at one point.
Really? Yeah.
And then he didn't play the national team early. So the other direction I was going to go now was a lot of the time when I think about the days even before I was watching, I got some old school buddies in Hermosa, Manhattan, who love to go to all the tournaments. One guy, Steve Glass, who was like a AA player in the 70s.
Yeah.
But he's probably like in his 70s now, but he's still really fit.
Right.
He and I talk volley like at every tournament. I like to talk to the old guys and learn. And
but a lot of the old guys don't have the new school perspective.
Well, this guy gives it straight though. This particular one, he'll be like, yes, the guys say are way better than they were in my day. You know,
dude. Even when I played in college, I go back and watch now. I'm like, dude, the tempo.
It's slower, right? Back then,
yeah, for sure. Yeah. And ours was like I ran extremely fast
for those days.
For that
time.
Now it's like the guy hitting. They'll like set a pipe on the first contact, and then the guy will come in and then set out of that, and like it's changed so much since I've been
It's changing fast, and the speed and the size and the power, and it's impressive. And you know, women's game to me as well has become so great lately. The skill and the power and the strength are as much as they've ever been, and getting faster and faster. Right, a lot of male fans sometimes say they don't enjoy watching the women's game, but I think in the last 10 years, the women's game has become incredible. Maybe even longer ago than that. I mean, Misty and Carrie obviously were amazing.
Right.
But I'm obsessed with Cloth and Nuss.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what it is about Kristen Nuss, the defender, who's
everybody
5 foot.
That. Everyone loves watching her.
5'7".
Yeah, I would guess like 5'7".
She's is magic on the court. She's she's a magician.
Yeah.
Like, so I like her because she digs 1,000 balls. She hits the best shots. She works what she has to its maximum potential.
Exactly, right.
Right? And if you're going to pull on her, she'll still hit down the middle and score. And I think it was very interesting to see them dip their toes internationally. They win a future. They win a challenge. Elite 16, they got a number of fifths. They've been close.
Yeah.
But I think as they develop, they could eventually be the top U.S. team potentially.
Sure, yeah.
But that's so, to me, like, and like that goes back to kind of like Laura Ludwig was the first time I remember in 2014. Okay, you remember World Championships? Were you with Hayden in 2015? Did you guys go to World Championships? Yeah. Do you remember the year before?
She won that.
Do you remember they had the year before the test event? It was also in the Netherlands. They did like a test version of that in 2014.
Yeah, where did we play?
It was Apeldoorn, Utrecht, Den Haag.
I don't think I played in the one before that.
The one, so 2014 was the one Rosie got to the finals and lost.
That was on the beach, though.
Yes.
But
they also had
to
pool
Poland,
play.
right?
Yeah. And I was sitting next to a Polish fan in the front row, and he was giving it to me the whole match.
They have crazy volleyball
dude, this guy was like, we're going to freaking smoke your guys. And I was like, dude, I got Rosie and Phil all day. Are you kidding? And somehow we lost to Mario and Fifi, who are great players.
Yeah.
Marius Prudel, I think people call Mario.
I don't know,
And Felix, people call Fifi.
We call him Ponytail.
Ponytail guy. he that was his career year, though.
Oh, yeah. They went off. They were number one at one point, right?
They had like
Trading off
2 seconds in a first.
Yeah.
And Rosie and Phil had first, second, first. But like that was the tournament I saw Laura Ludwig play really close up for the first time, and that's what kind of made me say women's volleyball is freaking amazing. She
was dope,
dude. She would bounce balls into the stands during matches,
and it was kind of like
and fired up like
how Sponsel dives now, where you're like, whoa, that's not a girl dive. Like it is now.
But the
like
strength,
Ludwig was doing
the
that.
speed have developed. The athleticism of the women's game is amazing to me right now.
Yeah.
And there are, like, it's, you know what it reminds me of? Remember back in, like, the 80s NBA, if you ever were old enough to watch 80s NBA, there were tall guys, but they were, like, what we call gorns. You know what I mean? Yeah. They're just big ogres who could barely move.
Yeah.
Because they were in the NBA, because they're 7-footers, like, I don't know. I'm not going to use any names because I don't want to, like, rub anyone, but, like, kind of like a Ostertag type of guy in Utah, right? Yeah. Just a big guy who takes up space. He can do his job. He's coordinated. But they're not jumping.
Yeah.
That was at one time kind of the tall women's player mold, but now they're quick. The tall girls, they run, they jump, they pass nails, they set gold with their hands. Like this, the setting has become better, a lot better.
Right.
I see this debate sometimes. People debate who's the best setter. I mean, Phil. How can it not be Phil?
Well, I always think, like, how do you even vote for that? Like, you really need someone paying attention to it and, like, doing analytics
over different.
Because if someone has nice hands, right? Which who cares if you have nice hands? Like, it just looks soft and nice. Right. Is it in the right spot? Is it in a spot that you think is good, or the guy that hitting it thinks
that's a good call?
Because you change partners.
It's all about how,
it's not like Rogers ever ran anything other than an up and down.
One set.
So you never saw Phil having to set a tempo.
That's a good call, dude.
Like a Haydn, right? Where it's like he's running over there, running over here.
He's taking a lot of
tempo,
different
transition, shoveling it over here.
That's a really good call. I didn't think about that. That's interesting.
It's just when we're voting for it, I'm like, I mean,
you almost
he sets it up and down and in the same spot every time.
Well, so you remember when he first played Rosie and they had Rosie starting on the left and Phil on the right.
Yeah.
And Rosie, previous to that with Jake, he would take like sort of a high ball, but kind of closer
Jake's
to the pin.
actually an underrated setter.
Jake's
but his
great
hands
setter.
It doesn't look that
perfect,
pretty.
but
even Rosie's are weird.
Right, Rosie has that weird
three finger
push. Yeah, I know. I'm always but it comes out perfect.
And his bump setting, his transition,
his location is flawless, and Jake's location is flawless.
Some of these Euros are ridiculous too. So I don't know how you can vote on best setter.
Yeah, I think, but like with Phil, so like Phil was setting that up and down Raji set to Rosie. From the wrong side at first, right? So they put Phil on the right the first season, and they had some success. They like win the first tournament there together, and Rosie looks at me and goes, "We're good," and I'm like, "Uh-oh, here we go." And Rosie, they get a 9th, a 17th, a win, a 5th, a 9th, and then they switch.
Yeah.
And put Phil, it's all pre-injury, right?
Yeah.
They put Phil back on the left and Rosie on the right because Rosie's Rosie. It doesn't matter where he is.
Right.
Right? So, and then Phil gets back to being comfortable and doing what he knows how to do.
I mean, they were going to serve Rosie for the most part anyway.
Yeah. That was the thought.
But now Phil's an option onto.
That's right.
Now Phil's able to dominate.
Isn't that a funny question, by the way? I've thought about this for years. Why doesn't Phil option more? In general,
I've always
Isn't that something that every fan's probably
never wanted to? Can you imagine if I was in Phil's body, like how much
you would love the
if
option.
There's a green light, I just go,
God,
right?
You would go.
Well, it just makes sense to me.
Yeah, the blocker's not set up, the defense isn't set up like.
And if you're the best,
and you're
player,
you're 6'9" and long and quick and jump high, and the way Phil hits the ball, he can see. And do thing like the angles, are ridiculous.
It's so frustrating playing Phil because
it is.
I don't even know if it's vision. It is vision, but he jumps a little. He would jump a little higher than me, I think.
Yeah,
and he's already bigger.
Yeah,
so I'd have to wait. I'd be like, okay, I gotta show something. And I'd jump and maybe dive a little bit. Yeah, fade one way, and he'd get up and see me. And then just in midair, just turn the other direction. Yeah. And while I'm already over here, I'm like, oh, well, now it's too late. I'm already in the air.
Already done.
And just bounce it like there's no block up.
I'm
just like, how do I... I could jump later, but then he can hit straight OT.
Phil reminds me of an athlete who could have played many sports. A guy who's so... I mean, a lot of you were like this. He
didn't have that, killer, gnarly... athlete instinct, you know?
Right.
Where he just like...
Yeah, he seemed like a little laid back through the process.
For sure.
He was always like calmly winning.
Right.
Like, and he was also a guy who on the road like is generally pretty shy, like kind of to himself.
Yeah.
Like not a guy who's going to be in the stands like having a beer with fans.
We had him on a few episodes ago.
Oh yeah, dude. You know
one.
what? I watched a lot of it. It was good.
Yeah.
He did, and by the way, he explained everything really well, like the stuff that I wanted to hear.
For sure.
So I was really happy about that.
So what about back to
AVP?
Well, like comparing generations.
Yeah. So like, here's the thing: in the '90s,
where are we at now?
I think
in terms of volleyball.
Well, I think we're at the highest it's ever been. Okay. I think it always progresses that way, as long as you're not in one of the lulls caused by a bad like bankruptcy of the tour, where a lot of players drop out.
Which has been
kind of several times, career. Right? You've done a few of them,
right at the first bankruptcy,
and then
right when we kind of got momentum,
the second like resale happens. But
I was hoping that we get the Donald era, and then I'd climb my way to the top. Kind of where we're at now, and then the tour would be big, and I could capitalize on it.
So think about the difference between, let's start with big court versus small court, right?
Yeah.
And some of the intrinsic differences. Big court, you did not have to set as precise of a ball, right? Not even close. Guys were setting each other 5 feet off.
You could hit anyone. I mean,
think about if you tried to set your partner 5 feet off consistently right now.
Yeah.
How would he side out? By the way, I just want to say this before I forget. Trevor is one of the most phenomenal players. Every time I think about him, I go, he's not the fastest guy, he's not the tallest guy, he's not the strongest guy, but he plays, but he wins. So I just want to say there's a point in players, I just want to go on this tangent because you're here and that's your guy, and I just think Trevor is a badass. He's a fucking badass. You know,
very underestimated.
Dude, he wins. So when you, at the end of the day, like if you're a young volleyball player and you're like, oh, I jump so high and all this, focus on learning how to be really mentally tough. Like focus on, like that's what I think Trevor is. It doesn't matter the score. It doesn't matter how many fans are screaming at him. It doesn't matter who they're playing. You guys are playing. The guy just sides out like a machine, right?
Yeah.
And digs the ball at the moment you need it, or gets that key little block like when he
he has a relentless confidence.
Yeah.
Like you can't break his confidence.
That's right. But isn't that what all the best athletes in all the sports have? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I think if you look at different players, like if you're trying to develop, if you're USA Volleyball, that should have to have a factor in the status of a player, like where you think a player is developing, is if they can have the mental side of the things. And that's why you guys work with sports psychs and that stuff. And I think that's a critical part of the game that's not talked about a lot.
It's just got to be more elite than ever with the amount of work we're doing, and every day, like the mental preparation, physical preparation that's going into just one practice. Like I've been training by myself lately, and I got, I'm still with the sports psych. I don't have a team. Yeah. I'm still doing these routines before practice. So like very consciously, every little piece of practice is very conscious and intentional. If someone like starts playing music and dancing, it's like, no, bro, hey, what are you doing? Like, this is practice. There's something that needs to be done right now. Whereas back in the day, it's like,
it
kind of show
more
up,
casual.
Whatever practice you get out of it.
You guys work hard. You guys and girls work really hard at the pro level right now. Internationally, it's the skill level is insane. Yeah, like you go to tournaments, there's qualifier teams that are just pass and set perfectly. They're physical. Yeah. The difference sometimes is just a little bit of experience. Right. When you guys beat a team like from that maybe they're younger. I mean, the Swedish kids, we obviously can't not talk about that, right? Because they're redefining what the game looks like. They went from early this season, occasionally losing in the qualifier, to now winning major tournaments.
Yeah, those guys are
good.
They
beat Norway twice this year.
Yeah, they're good.
That's
the one team where it was like, they're really benefiting from this new system.
Yes.
But then, they get a few wins where
you're saying the lighter hand setting rules?
Just the 3 out of 4.
Oh, the 3 out of 4, yeah.
Because at one point they were ranked top 10 in the world without playing in an elite.
Yeah.
And you're like, this isn't how it should work.
It's not how it should work. No.
At this point, and we've known it for a while now, it's like these guys were going to, no matter what the system is, they were going to work their way up to the top.
So like what I want to tell fans about watching today's game is if you haven't played a lot, maybe you don't see the nuance in how the Swedish kids really play. They don't pass the ball. They pass the ball to a very specific location with a specific height.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking to myself in my head as we were watching in the Maldives, right? And they were playing my guys, and then they get a bronze medal. I'm watching them do this no matter if you serve them deep or short, no matter if you serve them middle or line, seam or line, jump serve or float. They just have dialed their system in. Now, sometimes it doesn't go their way.
There's a lot more intention on each touch.
That's it. And that's the point about the difference in today's game from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, is touches have become intentional outside of the attack. Because the attack was always intentional. Yeah. But now the set.
Pass somewhere over there, set it.
Guys are running like, here's a 1, here's a 2, here's a 3, whatever the zones are. They're different names. Some people are A, B, C, D, whatever it is. There's zones, there's heights. Remember, like, that used to be indoors. There was a time when I was in high school, I remember coaches, international or college, they would divide up the net into 5 zones with different heights. So what most people call a 1 was really like a 31 or a 41 or something. Yeah, 31. They had a shoot or a gun or something, whatever we call back then was like an 11. Yep. A 4 was really a 14, and a 5 was the 5 position, but with the heights it was more like a 54 or something, right? So the interesting, there was a system like that for indoors at one time. Now Beach is starting to adopt that idea. We need to divide the net up with heights and zones so that we can attack the other team's defense. Yeah. Why? Because blockers got so freaking huge. Yeah. And so, you got Oleg in front of you. So you're like, okay.
Oh, 100%.
I better do something here.
Totally. And now it's changing the way that these blockers have to play. And these blockers are also extremely athletic. They're not these ogres you're talking about.
No, they're quick.
The ogre ones are going to get burned by this, right? No offense, but Doherty used to get just Poland or whoever would just run around him.
And Ryan was a good athlete overall.
Yeah,
but they could use that part of him, right?
He was slow laterally.
Right. Yeah. They could isn't that interesting? Teams are so good now at scouting and figuring out other teams' weaknesses. They literally could figure out we know his weakness is lateral movement. Yeah. And we're going to attack that. Yeah. That's very technical compared to, no one did that in the 90s. Right. Even in maybe the early to mid 2000s, I don't think people were really doing that. Yeah. So it's really cool to see the advancement in the thought behind.
And a lot of that is coming internationally. They're the ones doing this forward thinking and creating these things. And my thought is I just haven't really wrapped my brain around the jump setting, because when it first came out, teams weren't executing it well. Even I did it a few times where I'm proud to say I was it was one of the, obviously people probably been doing it since
early
the 80s.
Jump setting, right?
But I did it.
No, nobody jump set in the 80s.
I don't know. I remember doing it a few times with Hayden just because I could, and it was just fun for me. But I had to do it in the perfect situation, and I had to make sure Hayden had no one up,
so
he'd be mad.
Here's my question for you as a defensive blocker in that situation. If a guy jump sets, can you tell if he's going to option or set early enough? Or do you think it does work? Because isn't that the point of the jump set?
No, it freaking works.
Okay, because the Swedish kids...
There's max jumping to where
if you can pull back and change it...
And then you have to play this late indoor style blocking, which actually... It's really hard, but I actually...
Well, you're good at it.
If anyone's going to be good, I feel like I could be better at it than others. Yeah, because I used to play middle blocker.
So you could actually hang with that.
But you're still late blocking.
Doesn't it seem like sometimes the jump setters commit to the set too early and don't fake the hit so that the blocker is just out with the hitter anyway? Or do you think that's not an issue?
Wait, so do they commit to the set too soon?
I think sometimes they jump set and they never look like they're going to swing.
Right. Well, it depends on the angle. So I think obviously Sweden has it down. Partain's got it down a lot.
Dude, he's amazing.
Because he's an indoor setter. So he's used to coming in to jump set a ball.
Yes.
And he's a lefty.
Yes.
So he's coming in to jump set, and he just gets to decide right there. So when we played indoors, that was pretty flawless, the way he was playing it. And we would have needed to strategize a little better.
I think you're right. That's the part. So it's interesting because I think Partain is... Wow, is he good?
He's doing good. My thought is, though, should teams, players, be out there trying to work on that Like, are we there yet?
I don't. I think
Or
if
it's got to be certain individuals.
I think it takes a while to develop if it's not something that you're doing naturally. Like Partain does it naturally, like you said, because he came from the indoors. And
well, like I feel like I can do it.
You
naturally.
know what Razzie, the Swedish coach. You know, what he said was that it took them 4 years to perfect their passing system.
Yeah, because when we first saw them, it was like they're screwing themselves up too much.
It took a while.
It's interesting that you say that it's a passing system, not a setting system.
Right. Because it's about, like, I was thinking about it. It just took me listening to him say that and then really watching their games carefully to see that they pass high to near the net a little farther over than you would expect.
Right. Yeah.
So the right side hitter, if it's too far
back
inside, he can't hit that.
Right.
So the left side has to pass further over, and it's sort of both ways works that way. I mean, it's not as hard if you're passing the right to the left side guy, but you can see it when they do it, and it works. They spread it. There's obviously the Aussies. You know who was the first team to do that?
Though, when I watched the Aussies do it, I was like, they're hurting themselves more than it's working. So that's not good.
It might not be, but
and they were trying to launch it out to the pin.
Yes, from the other pin.
Yeah,
and the girls do it, right? Taliqua and Maria Faye do it.
They do it, but how many are successful?
You know what's
Only
funny?
Them.
You know the first team to do that pin spread offense? Damien Schlacht and Josh Schacht. I don't know if I'm getting the last names right.
Schlacht and Schacht?
Yeah, literally. Damien, Josh, I think were their first names on the World Tour for Australia in about 2005 or 6.
Why has Australia always wanted to run this?
A coach there must have decided it was a good idea in the mid-2000s.
And everyone has to do it.
And for some reason, they've always pushed it. So what's it, McHugh right now with Paul Burnett,
you really just have to look at it. Because, what's a good side-out percentage? 70%?
Well, so are you subtracting errors or are you keeping it?
Yeah, I mean, just...
If you for one match,
what's the average? If you're above this,
I know for a season 400 is pretty average, right? Or what we call 400, which is 40%, right? I know 50% was the leading kill percentage on the AVP this year. Over the whole season, 50% was the highest.
So let's just say 50%.
So let's say 50 or better, you're doing really well in a tournament. Let's say.
So if the Swedes were to run it up and down. They're obviously really good volleyball players.
They are good volleyball players, yeah.
Would they be siding out the same percentage and not wasting jumps?
I think so.
Are they only doing?
Because they're physical.
Only able to?
Have you seen that left-sider jump, dude? He's crazy.
Hayden wouldn't be playing if he jumped set every ball.
Because imagine how many extra jumps that is.
So many jumps.
Exactly. Many jumps.
But then I was also thinking...
Is it because they're 19 or 20 or whatever?
100%.
Okay, yeah, okay.
But if it works, everyone would do it.
Yeah.
And is it actually significantly more jumps? Because if you jump set and get the kill, then your partner
doesn't
jump. So that subtracts the jump.
Yeah, so it's an equal.
Every time that your partner hits it,
it's an extra jump. But if you're optioning, it's the same number of jumps.
Right.
So maybe on average, you're adding 50% more jumps.
Maybe not.
Maybe not even that many.
No, not even that many.
Maybe a third more jumps or something.
Right, a third maybe.
At that age, they're not going to care. But as they go along.
And then long tournaments in the heat.
Right. Well, if there's a lot of wind, deep sand, there's interesting things you don't see as much on international that you see more AVP, right?
But
that could factor in
But it's at the point now where you're seeing, okay, this is a system that can work. Is it worth starting to implement it or trying
because how long is it going to take to learn it?
Yeah, well, but are you going to get left behind if you don't?
That's a good question. I guess it depends each team. If you're already having success, don't change, right?
And there's some people just straight up can't jump set and option but a lot of them actually.
I think each team, if you're more veteran and you have your system, you and Trev, you wouldn't change and do that because what's the point?
Trevor's not going to start jump setting.
Okay, good.
I used to jump set a little bit with him.
Yeah.
And he wasn't ready.
Don't you think it changes the timing of the hitter too? If you're used to that, off the ground set.
Yeah, for sure. But if you got no one up, who cares about your timing?
Yeah, life is good, right? Yeah.
Hayden was cool with me jump setting.
Really?
If I get him no one up, because he has just such good feet to ball.
Yeah.
Trevor would pass it. You see me jump, and he just stands straight up, and then I jump set it back, and said, "No, dude, don't do that." If there's no one up, you got to hit it, dude.
But I mean, Trevor's more of a guy who works off the defense to get his side outs than he is a guy who's going to be stoked on no one up, right? I mean, he still can crush balls, obviously. All you guys can, but it's interesting. I don't think if you're so then there's teams running other weird things too. Like they run to the middle as a setter and they do little back quicks and front quicks and other stuff. There's Adrian and all the weird stuff he does.
And that's
how about that new
system.
team switch up?
What's the
so now Adrian's playing? You know, Adrian's playing with Alex Rangeri.
No,
you didn't hear this yet?
Rangeri,
my boy Rangeri just texted me a couple days ago. Yeah. So Rangeri and I hang out sometimes, and he gave me the kind gelato spot when I was in Rome and all that.
Yeah,
and we do pizza and whatnot.
He's like the stereotypical Italian stallion,
dude, that guy.
I don't know, giving you espresso, he'll go party and be pulling all the trim.
That was the best. That was the best thing he said to me. We were in Dubai at the end of his tournament. He's playing with that young guy. You know, we call the guy Mowgli because he looks like the jungle guy. And they did okay. They got a couple fifths, whatever. And I'm sitting in the stands at the last match, like gold medal match at night, whatever. It's dark, but there's a good number of people there. And he looks at me and goes, "Hey, you got any pants with you?" I'm like, because I'm wearing shorts at the match. I'm like, "What are you talking about, pants?" He's like, "We're going out after this." I'm like, "I'm going to bed, bro. But I'm old and married, but have fun." I was like, but it was cool. He's so rad. And so I see something.
One of the gnarlier athletes I've seen.
Oh, dude, the jump on him
when he's
when he's healthy.
He was so gnarly with Adrian the first time through.
Yeah. He blocked a lot of balls.
God, and he was like
that's kind of what made that team work, because Adrian's going to scoot around and dig, but not have a huge transition percentage.
But Alex has hands too.
He has good hands,
and so he can set Adrian.
So, but from what I gather, Lupo snagged Rossi.
Okay.
From Adrian.
Huh.
From what I gather.
Because I also know playing with Adrian, you don't get the support of the federation, which hurts. Screw it.
Because in Italy, so this goes back to what we were talking about
BS,
earlier
the way
about
they treat him. By the way.
Oh, it is. Because if you're in the international game, you know you're not going to make a huge amount of prize money. So the federations that have a huge advantage are the ones that salary up their players, right? Russia, well, not right now, but Poland, Italy, sometimes Brazil. But on the other side of the coin, Germany is apparently really tough with the federation. The Dutchies have a really good federation, right?
Yeah.
So, think about if your federation paid you a salary to play. I mean, you guys do get a nice stipend, living stipend. It's not a full salary, but it's something.
We're lucky.
I think US does hook it up.
Place.
No, USA Volleyball does as much as they can, and really is working hard to improve.
A lot better than a lot of other.
They're working hard to improve that.
Yeah.
And so. So anyway, but looking at Italy, like you said, Adrian's not getting support from the federation means his partner's not. So if Lupo calls you up, and Lupo's like the god over there, right?
Right.
And Lupo's also the man, right? And there's no one cooler than Lupo. You go out to eat if you go out to eat with Lupo, it's one of the best. It's it's the most amazing experience. He orders so much food, and if I try not to eat some of it, Eddie, what do you not eat it for? It's so good. And you got to eat another piece, please. So we're eating all this food. We're down in Brazil. And I go, he's like, his coach is Fosco.
Yeah.
And his other guy, Carlos Cartaya, that travels him, an old Florida guy. I've known Carlos forever. So Carlos and I are walking behind him, and I'm like, where are we going, dude? We're going to the supermarket. Well, we just ate dinner. What are we doing in the supermarket? Well, Lupo wants a pint of ice cream or something. So we go and he buys the big old gallon of ice cream and gets a bunch of plastic spoons and won't, he's like, you have to eat it, Ed. I'm like, I don't want any ice cream. No, I'm sorry. Here's a spoon. You must eat ice cream. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm eating ice cream. So Lupo apparently gets Rossi.
Got you.
Because there was no one else for him to play with. What was he going to do? Go drag out Matteo Martino or something, and an old indoor guy? Or he didn't play. Remember, after him and Rangeri split, he hasn't played a single tournament.
Was there bad blood between he and Nikolai, or it's just we played together for so long?
I don't know. Not at all. I believe what happened was Nikolai just said, you know what? We had a silver medal in 2016. We've had a good run, but funny fact, I'd say one of the best teams in the world over the stretch they played together, 11 years, right? You know how many tournaments they won?
My initial thought would be 10.
But the true answer is 3.
That's
right?
weird.
So, and that's the perspective, right? That I think Nikolai's thinking we were in the top 10 for 11 years, but we only won 3 tournaments, major tournaments. I don't even think they played in lesser ones.
They were probably in the top 6.
They were always in the top 6. They were gnarly. So, but he gets Codafaba, and they won their second tournament together.
Well, that's always honeymoon phase.
Yeah, that's true. But Latvia, which was a full field, right? Yeah. And they went in and smashed people. Of course, Norway was out for injury, but still. So you're right, honeymoon phase, but they're good. I mean, Codafaba is another guy who runs a shorter set, right?
Yeah.
And with that
he got
whip
a lot better
arm,
this year too.
Yeah, he agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Like but playing with Nikolai. I always used to call Nikolai the Italian Phil, like kind of a poor man's Phil.
Yeah.
He hand sets really well. He's got a big jump serve. You basically can't serve him.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of the same things you would say about Phil.
And just bounce balls.
He'll just freaking detonate balls, right? He sees it, he goes high. It's like, so in terms of AVP, just getting back to that for a second, I liked the tour series this year in a way because it's like a paid qualifier tour, right? Does it feel that way? Or does it feel different?
We've talked about it a lot on the podcast.
Does it feel like that? Because, so did you ever hear about the qualifier tour in the 90s?
No, but
there was a
but
qualifier
I think there
tour.
should be a qualifier tour.
There was a paid qualifier tour in the 90s. Guys like Jason Persley, John Anselmo,
That's probably fun
Kevin
to follow.
Wong, Greg Schenkel, all those guys came out of that paid qualifier tour and got to be main draw players. Because in those days, you were a main draw player meant you traveled the whole tour. You could be exempt.
Right.
They don't have that anymore. Back in the 90s, you could be exempt. That means you would never play a qualifier. If you were exempt, because most events did not have on-site qualifiers. Only Manhattan Open and a couple other big ones did. The qualifier tour served as a way to become exempt, but only for the 4 best players maybe from each year.
Yeah.
So the tour was locked. It was invitational. It was not open. And the Manhattan was an open because it had a real qualifier.
Right.
See the difference? So what I felt like the tour series did, because now your tour also does not have an on-site qualifier except in Manhattan.
I like it.
I like it. I like it too.
No,
and
I think it's all good. I just hate how we've talked about it too much on the podcast. Well, like it should be a qualifying tour.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not.
Yes.
Ed.
You're right. You're right. It turned into
They're
something.
not calling it that.
No, it turned into something where guys like Taylor and Taylor can go down and
Taylor just won the tour,
which is
the tour series.
Which is one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the mains tour. Can go win a tour series, which is a little unfair to those guys.
These guys have won the last 3 events in a row. Or whatever.
It's just like, well, it's the same old discussion of like BVB Info's website and what do we consider a win? Did winning like an open back when they were Grand Slams open FIB, did that count? Or did winning a minor league like AVP, does that count? And it's a weird discussion. I mean, win's a win, but full field is important, I think, to really consider. The Tour Series should have been, done that way, I think. But because $8,000's a lot, though, for first place at a local tournament.
Like certain players call the San Francisco Open is still the joke.
Well, that was always the one where it conflicted with Stade, right? That July 4th weekend. So guys who like when Rosie and my guy Chase lost in the finals to Ed Ratledge and Rafu. Right? And that was Chase's first taste of like getting deep in a tournament, but they were like the top 4 teams weren't there. So
and then Maddie and Loomis won the next year.
Dude, that was so cool. Or the year before.
Oh, yeah, it was the year before.
Okay. But Maddie's a gnarly athlete, dude.
He was gnarly.
He jumped. Like he was like armpits over.
He was like, kind of freakish.
Yeah. Like it was scary how high he could jump.
He's like not even 6'5", I don't know. Like maybe
6'5". He's so there's
6'4".
Like, Ty Loomis, this is interesting. I love one of the people I love more than almost anyone in the world. There's when I was first hanging out with Rosie, and not to go back on that rabbit hole, in the late 90s, so Rosie was living in 99, 2000. He started living in a place in Hermosa with Jeff Carlucci, his first partner's sister lived in this house.
I think you've mentioned every person in the volleyball community so
Dude,
far.
there was this cool, over in 2nd Street in Hermosa, there's an apartment complex with a huge hot tub.
Yeah.
And but the whole place is locked up and there's a fence, so we'd all jump the fence. It was I remember it was Ty Loomis, Andrew Vasquez, Evie Matthews, I think Rosie, Carlucci, maybe Mark Williams. We had a crew that was just partying, breaking into hot tubs. It was and the volleyball was part of the lifestyle for an hour or 2 in the morning, maybe a little format in the afternoon, and then it would just go. And Evie was fucking rad, by the way. Evie Matthews was so strong back then.
Oh, yeah.
You know who else was really good? Davenport. Davenport played with Nygaard for a while. Dude, Davenport had some semifinals on the AVP.
He's smart.
Dude, he's a great player.
Yeah.
There's it's so interesting. The coaches of today were all pretty strong players in their day. Like those guys.
Yeah.
And they bring just such an experience and wealth of knowledge. But that early... Man, there was this, that was when the AVP was, the Leonard Armato Tour was just getting started, and there was, an excitement. And I think like the players at that time though were not married. These guys, all these guys I'm talking about, they were young single guys.
Yep.
So like there was no like, and they could work as a bartender and afford a $500 studio in Hermosa. You know what I mean?
And if you did top 10, you don't even need a job.
That's right. Back, yeah. And
now
so,
it's like you got on the AVP.
Dude.
You can't make a living on the AVP.
I don't think it's even possible. If you do the math.
If you only play AVP.
Yeah, if you won every tournament.
I wonder how much I made this year.
But are you counting tour series or regular series?
No,
like
just
pro gold only or tour add-in tour?
Let's say I didn't play World Tour.
Okay, just played AVP.
Yeah.
And played all 16 events?
You can't really play all, but yeah,
Let's
sure.
pretend. This is hypothetical.
Pretend,
hypothetical. So what was a gold win this year? 30?
30, yeah.
Yeah, so there were 3 of those, right? And then there were 5 that you split 11, right? So you're 45,000, right, for the gold. Yeah. And then you're 5 for 6,500, you're making another 30.
Yeah.
30 and change. So now you're at 75,000, and then you get $4,000 each for the other 8. So you add another 40 grand in. So you're making 115,000 if you won every event the whole year, and that's it. And that's like kind of scary because it's funny. I was looking at some stuff.
If you're that good, you'd be on the World Tour.
You ready for this? Jose Loyola had a year where he made 350,000 in prize money just on the AVP. 1 year. And he didn't win every tournament. He won a lot of them, but
right.
You know what I mean? So like there, and that was in the 90s when money's probably worth twice as much as now.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
But still,
so he made $500,000.
I'm not trying to say anything bad about the AVP. They're working hard and they're trying to get this back.
Yeah.
And I think Bally's, I hope they have a master plan because someone told me, someone from Hawaii actually. Who was it? Someone came in from Hawaii and was like, hey. Oh, it was Taylor's dad, Chris. He was like, I've been seeing like AVP on TV like several times a week,
right,
on Bally Sports Network.
Yeah.
So that's actually, to me, that's a good thing that like they're utilizing the content that they bought. They bought the tour to get content for their TV networks and maybe do more stuff. We won't know until they release a new schedule. As soon as this next year's schedule come out, we'll have an idea of if they really are serious or not.
Exactly. Because this was a kind of a test year.
Because
they talked about the whole gambling thing and investing in bringing in analytics and people to do statistics.
I mean, so here's my thing, right? AVP, the people who are running it on the ground, Conover, Glazebrook, all those guys are amazing.
Right.
They're working their asses off. Yep. They're producing the best thing they can do with what they have.
Right.
But it's Bally's who has to open the piggy bank if they care. A little bit. Just open it a little bit because, what did they think? They were just going to buy this tour and spend nothing on it? Well, we all know there was some behind the scenes that they were going to even cut prize money, but they didn't thanks to the AVP team fighting for you guys.
Right. I think it was like... it was like the regional sports network play, right?
Yeah.
Like where they're just trying to get own content.
Yeah.
And then they just tell the AVP, here's your budget.
Yep.
Don't lose money.
Yeah. So, I mean,
deal with it.
And by the way, if you're not out there who's saying, well, cornhole's on ESPN, why isn't volleyball on ESPN? But the guys who play cornhole make $10,000 a year, the number one guy in the world. So don't worry about cornhole, right? You don't need to be on ESPN to make money. That's even though it'd be great.
Yeah.
That's not the absolute requirement. Yeah. Even though the early AVP in the 80s had a fight with ESPN and they'll never put it on again. But that's just, I think, from what I understand.
Well, they will if the sport's big enough.
That's right.
If it'll
so
make
isn't that
them
the
money.
point? Right.
It's all about making money.
In the end of the day, it is. And so we need to get this sport to a point where the leagues are viable financially and the players financially get rewarded for the work that you guys put in.
Yeah.
Because it's nuts how much you guys train and lift and do recovery and work with sports psychs. So it's a full-time job. I don't think people who see you guys come down and train for 2 hours, 5 days a week, typically, right?
There's no days that I go to practice and just come back home.
Never.
That's it.
It couldn't be.
Like, that's my day.
Yeah, you couldn't be successful like that in today's world.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a good comparison for your earlier question of the different eras because I don't want to out any of my buddies. I'll use Larry Witt as an example because Larry would maybe play 2 days a week.
Crazy.
And maybe go to the gym a few days a week.
Yeah.
And they were finishing, and they were like a top 5 team for 3 years.
Crazy.
2003, 4, and 5.
And they made more money in those 3 years than some of these top guys are going to make in 5.
Yeah, they did. They did well money-wise. So it's like guys back then, and Larry was supremely talented. I mean, you ever seen someone hit over Furby's block 27 times in a row exactly in the corner? He was he was just like, we used to call Larry Witt Lairbot, because he was like a robot. He did everything perfect, technically perfect. So that was the thing. But in those days, guys were like, I don't have to train this week. I'll be fine. I'll go to the tournament. There's another good one. Rosie on his 21st birthday. Let's use this as another little segue. Even though we're probably getting a little low on time. We're fine? Okay.
I mean,
yeah, whatever you want. I'm cool.
It's up to you.
Rosie and I were spending a lot of time together, and we go out for 21st birthday down to the pier in Hermosa.
Rosie's 21st birthday at Hermosa Pier.
And so it was me and Rosie, and we were going to meet up with more people later, but early we were kind of kicking it at 16th Street, where I just moved into 16th. No, maybe a year earlier. By the way, another thing we'll get to at some point is the fact that in those days, you couldn't just walk up and play a game of volleyball in California. Right. Guys would just tell you to go beat it. They'd be like, I don't know who the fuck you are. Get out of here. It doesn't
exist anymore.
Now it's kind of, actually it's pretty cool, but you kind of have to bring your own players. But anyway, so Rosie and I were at 16th Street, and I'd finally broken in. I lived in my apartment down there for like a year before they let me play on that beach. Like a year. Like those guys were like, who the fuck, get out of here, dude.
And that's where you're living now.
Yeah, 16th Street in Hermosa. Yeah. It was Akatubby, and it was Ian Clark and all these, Ian Martin, all these guys, like, right? And anyway, so Rosie and I are hanging out. He had probably gotten done training or whatever, and it's his 21st birthday, and it's June, right? I think June 19th. Yeah. And we're gonna go get some drinks. So my buddy Clayton, and rest in peace, Clayton. We love you, buddy. Clayton was a bartender at Sharky's for like 20 years, and he goes, "Hey, come on up." Except at that time, he had left Sharky's for like a year and went to Einstein's, which was then Abigail's. That one up on Manhattan Ave, around the corner from Pier Avenue. It's now like anyway, you don't know.
Nobody's gonna know.
It's before your time. And the guy puts 20 shots on the bar. And it's like, here you go, Rosie. This is your birthday present. And it was me, Clayton, one other guy, and Rosie. I can't remember who else was with us. Fuck, I wish I could remember. And me and Clayton and the other guy each do 2 shots. And Rosie proceeds to do all the rest of the shots in a row. Boom, 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 right? He's just ready to go.
Like 15?
He did like 14 shots, maybe 12 to 14 in that range
to start the night.
Oh, dude, he was amazing. He's a rock star.
That's so like what Taylor tries to do sometimes.
Yeah, so we go out and we have a great night, and we're just going through all the typical bars. Do Sharky's, Hennessy's, Malloy's. It's a fun night. I don't know. We're probably blacked out. I go in the house, and I don't know what happens to Rosie. Like, I think he's out on the porch sleeping on my couch. So I'm like, that's cool, out on the the deck furniture. I find out he fell asleep over the railing with his arm like this, and it pinches a nerve in his arm, and he loses feeling in his arm. Oh. So he has the Belmar Open that coming weekend. This is like a Tuesday or something, and he can't feel his right hand.
Like the next day?
No, for like 2 weeks.
Oh,
he can't feel from like his elbow down. So maybe it was only like half his hand or something, but he said he couldn't hold the ball to throw it up for a serve. He couldn't hand set, which he didn't do anyway, really. And he couldn't contact the ball right-handed. So he played the whole tournament left-handed, threw the ball left-handed, served left-handed, and got a 13th with Mark Williams, got 2 main draw wins, because back then it was 32 team draws, without being able to have feeling in his right hand. So that's another funny one. Sorry, Sean, if I outed you, but that was a great night.
It's all right, bro. You're already in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, they aren't going to take you out now. But that was another great one. But it's just like those, like there's a volleyball like culture to the beach life. And like Kevin Cleary, do you know Kevin? Who's like,
I don't know that
he
name.
Was the original president of the AVP in 1983, and he played on the AVP for a long time. And he's one of the greatest ambassadors of the sport because he's committed to the beach lifestyle more than anybody. He still plays. Okay. He's got to be like 70, and he's in unbelievable shape. He still plays at least 2 days a week, doubles, competitively with good younger players. So like I just want to mention Kevin Cleary because that's a little of his energy is kind of what is lost from the South Bay, at least right now. But there's other places. You can go to Florida and still have guys hanging out on the beach and playing ball all day, right? We don't really have that anymore. You know what I mean? No.
And it's not like...
Not that that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I like... thought that was the coolest thing too. And then I saw how my life kind of developed based on me just, one step at a time putting things in place. And
I'm not saying you as pros need to go hang out on the beach all day. That's silly.
No, totally.
But like...
It was celebrated a bit though. Yeah. And it still is a bit because I think...
listen to Hav or some of those guys.
Fans will come out. So you traveled across the country. Yeah. You're here to watch volleyball, but also like kind of probably party and go to the bars that night and like hang out. And volleyball is one of those unique sports where the athletes will actually come out. You can't come out. You're not going to
Remember
see an NBA player out that night.
Very rare. Like, or if you do,
unless you
their
have a lot of
bodyguards
money.
are going to push you
Yeah,
away.
exactly.
Right? But it's like what Kent Steffa said on your show, right? Was that he was like, we would go out early to the site, to the city, and the local promoter at that city would set us up with these gigs to go promote the sport.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's something we could really learn. You know,
100%. And we'd be down to.
It's not up to you guys. It's
athletes.
the tour has to do that.
And you kind of have to be. You have to be paid to do it.
Yeah, you do.
I can't fly out and skip 2 days.
No, you can't.
A day or two.
No, it has to be something that's built into the ecosystem where you know you're getting fairly compensated.
Yes,
right?
You get compensated.
And,
but we're marketing the tour, and you build these athletes so that they're even more valuable to market your tour.
Because it's I still think we do have a little bit of a Cali Florida rivalry sometimes, which is cool, right?
A little bit.
You think so? A little bit?
It might
still?
be over now.
Yeah, mostly
right?
over,
Now
I
they're
guess.
filling knickers.
They were really the Florida, like, real standard bearers.
Yeah, they weren't like Florida
Not like
proud,
rah-rah,
but like
but
the Rosie's Raiders were like,
we made that
you guys
story.
are Florida guys.
Yeah, right.
We don't like you. You're Florida.
There was
I wish it was more of like a Hawaii versus Cali versus Florida like vibe like that. You know?
I want someone who knows if I'm right about this or not, because sometimes my memory fades a little on certain things, but the Greyhound, Nick's nickname, which I freaking love. I remember the first time I heard that was this guy, Vinny Tattoo, who's a 70s open player who lives around the corner from me. 2003 Hermosa Open. He looks at me and goes, the Greyhound, Nick Lucena. But maybe it came from somewhere else, like he heard it from somewhere else.
I just assumed it was from Geeter or something.
I know Vinny Tattoo said that, but I want to know if someone else knows that maybe Geeter probably invented it, and he probably heard it.
Who knows?
But anyway, because Geeter was he's such a legend.
Geeter's a legend.
And before Geeter, it was Jim Rico. Did you ever meet Rico?
Yep.
He's
a SC guy.
I love Rico.
I know him.
He's a bro. He's an all-time.
He's still walking the street.
One of the best ever.
I wonder if any of the listeners knew like half the names that were mentioned here, or like even like a few of them.
Dude, I forgot on that list with that early 2000 Rosies, Saeed Sulekane. Look up that guy. He was a qualifier guy from San Diego. Saeed was good.
Got money, huh?
There's so many guys. Like, the sport has gone through so many interesting phases, but in every phase you have those young athletes who are scraping and clawing to get through qualifiers to try to make a main draw and tell their buddies, I fucking qualified for an AVP.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that's like, and then for those guys like you knew you were up ahead of that early, right? I mean, did you know?
Eventually.
I mean, did you know you're like, I'm not even going to worry about qualifying. I'm going to be right in. Like,
at what point?
How quick did you know you were going to be a good main draw player? So 2012 you started playing, but 2011.
Well, so like I got some confidence.
Jeffrey Carlson, right?
Yeah, Carlson.
Yeah.
I got some confidence in college. I went back and played at Outrigger in an open.
Okay.
And Wong played.
Okay.
It was a KOB actually.
Wow.
And then me and Wong were going at it.
Wow.
In the final, and I should have beat him. I was really pissed off.
Wow.
I thought I should have beat him.
You were right there with Wonger, and you hadn't really played.
And you could tell like he's cruising.
You
then
weren't
he's like,
playing
okay,
pro beach
I can't
at the
let
time.
this.
You were indoor guy, right, at the time?
But me and Riley started taking it seriously in Hawaii because I've always been.
Do you know Brian Thornton?
Yes.
Okay.
I've always been a beach guy, so I played as a kid in all these tournaments and started blocking balls.
Okay.
I started blocking balls in a different way, and I could tell from doing it and from other people like seeing me do it and be like, whoa, like tries a different breed of blocker. Yeah. And so I took a lot of pride in it.
When you came to AVP and started like playing qualifiers, you probably had a feeling that you were going to get through that.
I felt like
pretty quickly.
I felt like I was a little higher level than the guys I was playing with.
Did you go to Europe at all and play indoors?
I did. I played in Puerto Rico and Turkey.
Oh, okay. You played in Turkey? Wow, I didn't know that.
So basically two halves. Oh, no, and then I went back to Puerto Rico.
You did?
So two in Puerto Rico.
But then it was just beach after that.
Well, I was just playing beach in between.
Okay.
Because I'm like, I always knew that I was good at beach personally,
kind of
but
like
nobody
Casey,
knew me.
Kind of similar idea. Like he would do the Puerto Rico season, but he knew that beach was his thing.
My first team in Puerto Rico was with Casey.
No way.
Yeah,
you
my
guys
first
must have
pro
freaking
gig.
Destroyed people.
We were all right.
Yeah.
We lost our setter. But
guys like Felipe Relat and
the setter?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking of like some of the Puerto Rican guys down there.
Oh, yeah.
Because there was some gnarly like Midwest school, like IPFW, always had Puerto Ricans, right?
Yeah. No,
guys who
I
jump
became
so high.
real good friends with a bunch of them.
Dude, that's fun.
But wait, where are we going with this?
I don't know. We're just kind of chatting about like you getting into the tour.
Oh yeah, so
because I was just saying like here's the thing about what kept the AVP healthy to some extent was there's this layer just below it of rabid players who are good but not great, who play in different levels of tournaments, and then they want to watch their heroes play.
Yeah.
Like I played mostly in A's and double A's, right? But I couldn't wait to see Rosie play and do things I could never hope to do. I couldn't wait to see Phil, or I couldn't wait to see Nick or you or whoever, because it just in your head you're just imagining how amazing that must feel to play volleyball like you guys do.
Yeah. But for me it was literally one step at a time. Like I didn't even know I could play AVP. I didn't even think about playing AVP.
You went to Haydn in basically your second or third year, right? It was pretty quick.
My favorite blocker, because I love blocking so much, was Sean Scott.
No way. And you guys are similar, kind of?
He retired. I was like, I got the Hawaii in. I'm going to get Sean Scott's number from whoever. I don't know who I got it from.
Wow.
Sean, hey, I'm a Hawaii boy. Like, can I come get reps with you? Or like, whatever, even if I'm shagging.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm retired, but here's Haydn's number.
Seriously? That's how it went down?
Haydn's in the off season. He's like, yeah, I mean, if you want to get reps, I'm a rep guy. Just help me get reps.
Holy smokes.
And I thought I was just going to be kind of like, maybe like slightly involved in practice, but like, let me get this guy his reps.
That's unreal.
He's like, all right, you can jump in.
I mean,
jump in a little more.
For those of you who watch this who don't know, Sean Scott and John Haydn were the only team that could regularly beat Phil and Todd. Not regularly, but would beat Phil and Todd occasionally. Rosie and Jake very rarely, but I mean, Sean Scott and Haydn were really good. Won a lot of tournaments. And for you to get that invitation to go get reps with Haydn is huge.
And then it was like a few weeks, and he just kept inviting me back. And I just showed up and worked hard. And then eventually I remember where we were at Playa. I was in the car, like wiping sand off. He's like, hey, let's give this a shot. I was like, wait, what? And I think it's part of me being dumb, just oblivious.
Yeah, you're just like, I thought I was just like training and getting reps and getting better.
Let's do it. I'm like,
and you're like, wait a second.
Let me tell my agent that I quit indoor.
Dude.
I'm fucking done, and I'm in whatever you want.
So rad.
And then, the rest is history.
And then here we are in Orlando in a couple weeks. You're going to do it again one last time.
Yeah, and I think this episode will have come out. So hopefully, the event will have played.
Will have played by the time this episode comes out.
So hopefully, it'd be really cool to go end on a win. Maybe
you guys could easily.
We got some tough teams for sure, but
I mean,
50 years old.
Tay and Phil are playing together, huh?
It'll be a cool final if we can get Phil and Tay.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Other than that, are Cam and Theo in? Cam and Theo are in, I think.
Are they playing?
I don't think maybe not. Maybe
I don't think they're playing. Yeah.
See, I was saying there's some opportunity for you to get to the finals. This could be amazing.
I know.
Dude, it's going to be good.
The fans will know by the time they're listening.
And this Orlando spot's pretty cool. This Tavares. Have you been out there? Did you do that King of the Beach 2 years ago? I don't think you did.
No, people talk about it.
It was cool.
Sounded kind of lame.
Well, it's like, here's the thing. You're in the swamp in Orlando, but you've got this little oasis, this grassy oasis with some sand courts and a nice little setup.
It's low key.
It's low key, but that kind of works for right now. I think like if everything was Gold Series, I'm sure I'd like it better. Yeah. But I think the AVP had to move from Atlantic City, right, to get this event. I think it was kind of last minute, and I think it's a good it'll work.
All right. Well, hopefully I did well in that event. Only you listeners will know. But we've been going for a good amount here, Ed.
I don't know how long
Thanks
we've been
for coming on the show. Oh, I know that we could probably go for another 3 hours.
This is amazing.
But
I appreciate you.
Gotta get some dinner.
Me. Yeah, you must be getting hungry after your workout.
A little bit,
dude.
All
thanks,
good.
brother.
Yeah,
appreciate
thanks for coming on, man.
Dude, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have plenty more.
Okay, let's do it
later.
Yeah.
Shoots.